Throw loops, an option that's been around since, well, Street Fighter V, I guess you could say, but an option that's been around nonetheless. Throw loops is an option that is afforded to all of us when you knock down your opponent, normally with a throw, or you can just follow up your pressure into a throw. What ends up happening is that you can just keep going for throw, into throw, all over again. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why people despise throw loops. Yeah, Street Fighter sucks because of throw loops, said every player ever. But we're gonna go over the reasons as to why this is the case. So, reason number one, let's just start there, is the fact that Street Fighter players do not want to guess. Now, one might be asking, what is guessing? So in the case that you're in a situation like that, you have to make a decision. And people don't like to have to make a decision, especially if it comes with a rock, paper, scissors-esque choice there. What do I mean? After you do a drive rush jab here, you are +3. For those who are unaware, when you're +3 in these situations, it allows you to go for pretty much any option that you want to go for, without being too egregious, obviously. Right, so while you have this option available to you, you can go for like a standard medium punch, kind of check them. You could also go for a throw. So basically you have to guess between strike and you have to guess between throw. Access to this is fairly simple. What do I mean? You do low forward drive rush, you do stand fierce drive rush, or any sort of normal that is drive rush cancelable into this option, and then you have it available to you. The issue is that people feel like this is too accessible. When it's too accessible, it feels like you're guessing nearly all the time. So let's suppose here I get a decent hit, right? Afterwards, I get this drive rush jab off of this hit. Just because I did it properly, I actually get an extra frame there, but that's neither here nor there. Let's just assume that all situations are +3. Off of this instance here, now that I'm +3, I can go for throw and I can go for strike. Now some people would be thinking, oh, you know what, like, you know, there's some games that, you know, you can have quite a few options, and you're right, you do have a couple of options, right? The thing about it though is that if you decide to choose something and you're incorrect about it, then you simply just get hit out the gate. So options are as follows. So off of a situation like this, you could go for a parry, right? You go for a little parry situation. So let's say you go for the parry off of this instance. Right, you could be correct, right? That's pretty good, right? You could get the perfect parry off the situation and you could cook them for it, right? The issue is, even this in and of itself is a guess, because now you're guessing whether they're gonna go for a jab into it or they're gonna just go into it outright, and you get punished with punish counter on the throw, which also gives you heart knockdown, which puts you back into the same blender. It essentially makes it quite easy for your opponent to kind of loop this. One of the benefits though is that when you're mid-screen, you don't necessarily have access to the strongest of throw loops. What do I mean? When you decide to back tech, okay, so that means holding 2 buttons when you knocked over, you actually fall over the other way, like so, right? So what that allows you to do is that if you get thrown, they can't just decide to throw you, you have to go for normal, right? They can't just reach you outright. However, the other end of this is that they can decide to use meter in order to continue the pressure. However, depending on the situation in and of itself, you can use the fact that they're drive rushing at you to try and EX in the gap while you see them drive rushing at you, or they can try and bait. So like I said, there's a lot of thought process that goes behind the decision to try and go for offense immediately afterwards, right? Obviously we can just go for throw loop and then whatever have you comes from there. At least there's a little bit more of a reactable gameplay there. They do have options after they decide to drive rush at you, but this is something that you still have in mind. The issue with throw loops starts to come in when we are in the corner like so. When we're in the corner like so and we're here, now it becomes a lot easier where I don't have to spend any sort of resource in order to do this for you. and I want to keep doing this, and I can just keep doing this to you. So the biggest issue starts to become when you're actually in the corner like this. What ends up happening is that if your opponent tries to mash here, it just simply doesn't work, just because the way they've done this, the way they designed the game, is that if you have certain frame kills or if you will have whatever access, you can just kind of do this to them over and over again. So strike is very clearly not an option on the table. Why don't other games have this problem? Other games don't have this problem, namely because they have what you call throw protection when wake up, right? So what ends up happening is that if you try to go for this sort of option, especially when there is throw protection, you can kind of get away with the situation a little bit closer, right? And you can just go for a cross jab mash. But in this game, because there's no such thing, frames are the most important thing, and you can kind of just keep doing this to your opponent. This is namely why people feel so frustrated, because what ends up happening is that, let's suppose you choose an option like, God forbid, you try to throw tech, right? You try to throw tech off of this instance, right? And you just get caught. Now you're eating a stand heavy punch to the face, right? And then you die. It's a very sucky situation to be in, and like I said, it goes back to that very first point that I made, is that people don't like to have to guess on a consistent basis. The other thing to note is that the barrier to entry to get into this situation is to get them towards the corner, right? However, after one single combo, right, from mid-screen, after one single combo, and that's not even me choosing the good route, we're already in a situation where you're already in a corner, and that was just one single combo and whatever have you. Let alone if you just a slightly further that way, you're already in the corner. These are the types of issues that people have. Now, some might say, well, there's answers to it. Yeah, you're right, there are answers to it. Some of the options consist of trying to go for up forward, right? You can go for an up forward and get out of that situation, right? It's not a bad option, right? You get out of the situation and it's a little bit more cuddly. However, if you get the option right, now you're in a situation where you just get anti-aired, right? And because you're now anti-aired, they can just go into a situation that's similar to the situation you were in before, right? And as long as you're in this sort of situation where you can get overhead, right? They can decide to go for a throw to put you back in the corner. It's a lot of options that unfortunately you'll just have to take that DP. And because you're taking that DP, it now puts you in a worse situation as a whole, because let's suppose they just go for a back throw back into the corner. Now you're back in that same situation, and it can be very tedious and unfun to play with. Cool, right? So what can we do about this? The main thing that we're gonna have to hold, there are gonna be some things that we're gonna have to hold, right? To an extent, even though, let's say in season 3 they decide to take out throw loops, we're still gonna have situations where they can get thrown like this. Why? Because let's suppose that wake up jab is a viable option, right? And they can kind of get out of the situation like so. In this case, right, there will be situations where you think that a medium punch is coming, right? And then you get hit, right? You'll think that is coming, but instead you'll just get thrown again, right? And then you're in a situation once again where you're dealing with throw loops anyway. So that's neither here nor there when it comes to dealing with throw loops. But the main reason why people don't like throw loops is this cause as a whole. When you're in this situation on a consistent basis, and when every situation here results in a guess like this, it can be very jarring to the community. However, we'll see what the types of changes season 3 comes with. Honestly, people will still get throw looped, even though throw loops will technically no longer be, even though you'll be able to crouch jab out of it, you'll still find yourself in a situation where you get hit like this, right? Where you're in a situation like this, you'll find yourself in it either way. But that's, people are not ready for that conversation, because either way, it is what it is. Anyways, with that being said, what are your thoughts on throw loops? Have a good one, y'all. Peace.